Welcome to our final video in tips to creating an effective narrative. We've been looking at strategies that writers can use to make their writing more engaging and effective. And the reason we've been doing this is because a narrative is a form of entertainment and we want people to be interested and engaged in our writing. For that reason, remember that our goal is always to be memorable, to be engaging, and to draw an emotional connection from the reader. Our last tip is to create pace in dialogue by combining actions with speech. This is probably the most specific skill that we're going to be looking at, but it makes a huge difference and it really shows, I think, a key technique that good writers use as opposed to maybe what you might have learned in primary school. So, let's have a look at an example. "Where are we going?" she said. "I can't say," he said. "Why not?" she said. "Look, it's complicated, okay?" he said. "Well, I need to know eventually," she said. Now, you can probably guess what I'm going to say about this. It's repetitive. He said, she said, he said, she said, and on top of that, there's a real lack of information. Who are these people? What's their relationship to one another? Are they brother and sister? Are they friends? Are they enemies? It's very isolated from the action and the description. It's what we call talking head syndrome. And talking head syndrome is when we picture a lot of dialogue happening, but we can't actually picture what people are doing while they're speaking. And when it comes to that, we become disengaged. The reader disengages with your reading, with your writing. So it just goes to show it's so important to bring detail in. You shouldn't be saying, he said, she said, he said, she said. If I look back at this, it's grammatically correct in the sense that I can see the quotation marks, I can see the new line for each speaker, I can see the dialogue tags, but it's boring. Okay? Now, this is maybe where people would start when they're learning how to write dialogue. When they get to maybe year 6, 7 or year 8, we start to see some gradual improvements. And you might be writing something like this. "Where are we going?" she asked. "I can't say," he replied. "Why not?" she questioned. "Look, it's complicated, okay?" he responded in an annoyed voice. "Well, I need to know eventually," she whispered, fed up. Now look, in this case, I've certainly brought in more detail, but it is still very repetitive. We get a sense of people's basic moods, but what are they actually physically doing? Yes, he questioned and she answered and all of this kind of business, but just giving a different word for a dialogue tag isn't enough. There's not much to picture, and it's that same problem, talking heads. So let's see if I can change this up a little bit. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to avoid saying he said, she said, he said, she said, and I'm going to jump straight into describing actions that are happening. I'm using the same dialogue, but I'm putting more description around it. And think about how this changes the scene. Think about when we first started, how we thought, are they brother and sister? What's happening? Where are they? Even on the second example, we still don't really know. But let me show you how much a scene can be dependent on these details when I actually put it in context. "Where are we going?" She struggled silently against the handcuffs on her wrist, feeling the metal grate into her skin. This was hopeless. "I can't say." He kept his eyes fixed on the road, confident in her inability to escape, a slight smirk on his face. "Well, why not? Look, it's complicated, okay?" His eyes narrowed, and a quick glance shot towards her through the rearview mirror. She tensed, feeling the threat and warning in his eyes. "Just try it," he seemed to say. "Well, I need to know eventually." She hung her head forward and let her wrists fall on the soft leather of the car seat beneath her. The coolness of the metal cuffs suddenly seemed almost calming. Now, do you notice in this piece, it's actually turned out that one person was almost kidnapping the other person. Now, where did that come from? I guess in this case, I just tried to build it around that dialogue to show you how you can create such interest in your writing by taking quite simple dialogue and building descriptive language around it. Notice I didn't say she said, he said. I jumped straight in. Where are we going? She struggled silently against the handcuffs. I didn't talk about the fact that we assumed she said it because I said she straight afterwards. So you can actually really rely on your reader to pick things up. Another thing that I did, which if there was more dialogue here, I would have done a lot more of this, is that in some cases I didn't actually write anything. Why not? Now, you can see here that the last person to speak was him. I can't say. he kept his eyes fixed. That because it says he, we assume that it's him that's speaking. We can do that. Our brains process. So therefore, if someone else is going to speak and there's only two people in the scene, it must be her. So in this case, you can see that this why not doesn't need any explanation. I didn't need to do a big, complicated process description after everything. So I can still have some back and forwards. And it actually works really well because, of course, we get a sense of how she's feeling and how he's feeling. And then we have this kind of why not, but he cuts her off. Why not? Look, it's complicated, okay? And that's how we'd want it to sound. That's how we picture it happening, him snapping in really quickly. If we said, why not? She did this and she did that and then she thought about this and then she sat up and then she sat down and then she did this and walked over here. We break the pace of the story, which breaks the last rule that we talked about, which was about making it exciting and keeping that pace and the mood of it going. So really think about how you build description around your dialogue. I mentioned in the second part how important dialogue is, but it's more important still to make sure that that dialogue doesn't break the pace of the story, that it keeps the story going and progressing and keeps that momentum, because that's really what's going to engage people. Look, at the end of the day, you need to treat every word and every line in your story as an opportunity to make it more unique and engaging, and that could not be truer for a short story where you've only got a few hundred words or 1,000 words. You'll find they disappear really quickly. If there's a sentence, if there's a word, if there's a section where there isn't any detail or description, get rid of it. If it's not engaging, if it's not unique, and it's not the best you can do, get rid of it. It's just wasting space. It really goes to show how you can compact detail into the way you tell your stories, and that's such an important skill to develop. Look, hopefully this skill and all of the others in the other 5 videos have been something that you can use to improve the quality of your writing. They take practice. They take a bit of playing around with, but it's about finding your own style and your own voice. And hopefully this information is there to give you a step in the right direction.